Hey geographers, this video today will be all about regions. I moved it indoors because it's starting to get a little chilly out, but I still brought the flowers for you. It even sort of coordinates with the background. All right, so this is a concept I don't think you'll have any problem understanding, but as always, we'll review it and we can break it down even further. So basically, you want to know there's a few different types of regions. All right. So, what are the different types? The first type is a formal region, right? They're getting dressed up, they're all formal. You so sometimes hear this called a uniform region or a homogeneous region. So, when you think homo and you think the same, right, they have some sort of similar or characteristic about it. If everyone is dressing formally, they're dressing the same, however, you need to remember it. So, they need to have one or more unifying traits in common in that one formal region. Maybe it's the same language. Maybe it's the same religion. This map above is of religious regions. It could be just some system of livelihood, right? It could be as simple as something as the Corn Belt in the United States, where, like, you drive through for hours and hours and all you see is corn because that's all they make out there. Could be Chinatown in New York City or Philadelphia, right? Um, the borders can be traditional, right? Like sometimes, like you cross this border, and you're going to speak a different language, or it might be more of just this cultural border that can be transitional. And sometimes there's border zones. For example, if you go to the southern border and you have Texas on the one side and Mexico on the other, that might be like the Tex-Mex region, like on both sides, right? With sort of a blending of cultures. So to figure out if it's a formal region and you look at a map, understand what's the purpose of this map. Is this map being divisive, like we do this here and they do that there? Is it a we and they kind of divisive map? Might even be a unifying or just to highlight something special or unique. So always keep that in mind. Like, why is this map even a thing? So here's an example. If you've been following, oh, you know what? I don't have it in the right mode again. Darn it. If you've been following that they want to move the Sixers out of the sports area in South Philly and like into Center City and basically displace Chinatown, they'd actually be getting rid of an entire region in Center City. So lots of people in Chinatown are not too happy about it. Where will my daughter get her bubble tea when we visit? All right. You also have a functional region. So a functional region, just think that there's a function, there's a common purpose somehow in this region. This also sometimes known as the nodal region. That functional just seems easier to say. It does not need to be culturally homogeneous. So in a functional region, there may be people that speak many different languages, that practice many different religions, for example. But either politically or socially or culturally or economically, they serve as one unit when it comes to something. Might not be when it comes to everything, but when it comes to something. Nodes are important locations in that region that help the function, right? So it could be a city hall, it could be a capital, whether it's Trenton or Washington, D.C., it could be a church or some other religious type of place. It could be a bank. Do you recognize this bank? Do you? It could be a factory where things are made, for example. So, some example is NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, right? Those countries all like have a common function when it comes to trade. It could be a metropolitan area like New York City, right? And they have a common like financial hub where they have a common function. It could be just located by like sports uh, areas that are influenced by sports teams. So, if you put on sports radio, what are they going to be talking about? They're not going to talk about every team, unless if it's a national station, but if it's a local station, right, they're going to focus in. And the stores, right? The Dunkin' Donuts has different ads for some cities than they do in others, right? Because they play into that function. Um, Here's another one. Have you been following the Boar's Head plant and what happened with the listeria? And people have been dying from eating these basically contaminated foods. Well, The sad part is that now that, well, besides the people dying, that part's sad, but also they closed on this plant. So now this whole area surrounding this plant is is in trouble because you have Jarrett, Virginia, where it's from. And it's actually right outside the city area here where these factories are. And look at all the single family homes, right? Look at the commercial buildings. So maybe it's like a store people stop at to get, a breakfast sandwich and a coffee before they go to work in the morning, or some place where they grab the paper or something like that, right? So with this plant closing, you can have the whole function having no reason to exist, and therefore the region, right, sort of comes apart as well. A function can also be like, what is the delivery area for a local pizzeria, right? We are within this, that is their function, and there's something in common. Pretty good pizza, right? What is the delivery area for a newspaper? Or what areas is a local news station broadcast to, right? That could be a functional region as well. This one is sort of a fun one. Perceptual or vernacular region. So basically, something that people have in common culturally that's unique to the area. And it's based on shared feelings and shared attitudes of this place where they live. So there's this whole debate like, does the Central Jersey even exist? Or do people say, like, yeah, I'm from Central Jersey the way people do from South Jersey or North Jersey? Or if you go to the South and people find out you're from here, if you're from New Jersey, they will often refer to you as Yankees. Do you refer, like, is that a way that you identify yourself? These regions usually lack distinct borders. There's some blending area. It's not like you cross this line, so now you say pork roll and now you say Taylor ham. This is a very serious thing. Do you say sprinkles? Do you say jimmies? Do you say hoagies? Right? So notice, even though this map is sort of made, I guess, a little bit sarcastically, they even show you that there's this buffer area, learning that it's called pork roll, right? So there's not a distinct border. I grew up in pork roll land, but I won't go. I've been warned I will not go out anywhere around here and ask for pork roll. Um, and how do you consider yourself? If I was to ask you, what states do you consider parts of the South? You probably don't just think geographically, like what are the southern states? You probably think of features. Do they drink sweet tea? Do they say y'all? You might even think like other like how did slavery exist there? When did it end? Right? So you think of these political and social factors. Do they listen to country music more on the radio there? Right? What do you think of as the South? So look, if you ask some people, less people think that Florida is the South than Georgia, even though Florida is technically more Southern, because it's that cultural vernacular idea of what's the South. Not really anyone thinks New Jersey's the South, but uh, some parts of South Jersey, you may wonder. There's the rodeo there, and you'll question it. All right, West Virginia, right? Some people are like, oh, I don't know, right? But this is not an official border; it's just an idea, right? That's a vernacular region. And tied similarly to that is regions have identity as well. So your regional identity, where you live, it could be your race, your ethnicity, right? Like, um, and that race you might attach to a region, even if you're of one race and no one else of that race lives there, right? You still identify um, with something. You may identify with where your parents are from, right? Like you might identify with the region that you've never stepped foot in, or maybe haven't since you were a child. Many people do that, right? And that's part of their regional identity. That could also be related to religion. It could also be related to sports. You might say you're a Cowboy, even though you've never been in Texas, right? And if you're a Cowboys fan, you should probably reevaluate your life choices, anyways. All right. Keep in mind that unfortunately, some boundaries are contested, whether it's a formal boundary or even an informal boundary. And we've been seeing this a lot on the news, whether it's since past October or whether it's for a few years now in the Ukraine and Russia or many other places in the world, Ireland, Northern Ireland, for example. All right, so we'll review some different types of regions. Identify what type of regions do you consider yourself uh, members of? Which regions do you belong to? And just know that there are some like world regions that you should know. So these are, when we looked at like what's a global scale, right? This would be a regional scale because it breaks things down into regions or continents. So it's not just the continent of Asia. There's Central Asia, East Asia, South Asia. So you should eventually need to know that, like, if we discuss West Africa, you know where West Africa is. Or if we say, the Middle East or the Far East, you should know where that is. All right. So know your regions and be a happy person.